Welcome to the High Performance Herd. Today, we're lucky to have Cheryl Patnick, the Chief Administrative Officer of Tris Pharma, join us. Cheryl, welcome to the High Performance Herd.
Thank you, David. Great to be here. Appreciate you having me.
So, Cheryl, we almost always start with there's usually a point in leaders' lives where they go, yeah, I want to lead. I want to have something bigger than me. I want to have a role. I'm drawn to leadership for some reason. For you, when did that start?
Ah, David, I think when I think about that, for as long as I can honestly remember, people have mattered. So it's not been about me and my performance. It's really been about the performance of others. And I genuinely just want folks to be in a good place. And I know, as cliche as it sounds, be the best version of themselves. I think blending that with I do have a competitive spirit. I think I probably hate to lose as much as I like to win. So I think I just found myself somewhat gravitating to roles and even environments where I could really support teams. And I think that I know I mentioned as long as I can remember, like I do recall even back in elementary school, like being looking for the person who maybe looked like they needed a friend and see what I could do for them just to help them be in a better place. And then as I got older, am one who really likes sports and athletics. So that team environment really came through and kind of resulted in some captaincies positions. And then honestly, just individual contributor to manager to leader. So I think it's more of an evolution and kind of just been what was in me versus a defining
Yeah.
moment.
It's funny because as you're telling that story, we always go to what hits us, and what hits me is my mom, since the earliest I can remember, was make your small corner of the world a better place. And there's an essence of that in your story. Did that come from parents? Did that come from upbringing?
Yeah, you know what it did? It comes from my parents, like for as long as I could remember, like mom and dad were equals. So they were involved in our lives as much as possible. My dad, so kind of back to the sports, my dad coached a little league team, which was a hardball team, not softball. And he had myself and a few of my friends, female friends, girlfriends on that team. And we kicked butt and we would win championships for a few years. So I do, yeah, it starts there and just kind of that we all can make a difference and we have to be open minded about it.
Awesome. So jump from that early kind of beginning in leadership to your career and give us kind of the Cliff Notes version of, hey, here's how my career progressed up until Tris.
Yeah, sure. Um, so my career started at it was local. It was a local motel and restaurant, just like right around the corner. It had been kind of a staple of the community. And my first job was to be a manager there. Um, Honestly, going through school and even through college, like human resources just as a function really is what I gravitated towards. But I learned a couple things there. I really learned how to appreciate the amount of work that's required to get something done. So if I had to chip in and make some salads, I was chipping in and making salads. I learned it took an awful lot of time to make an ice cream sundae. But when you were upselling, right, the folks who were there, your customers, and you wanted to give them the best experience, really had to chip in. And so I've taken that with me, that not to overlook and make sure to understand like what it takes to get the job done. The benefit for me there as I sort of progress is one of my functions was payroll. So when an opportunity presented itself, I was prepared and I could say that, yes, I've been in HR because I did payroll. So I moved into what was close to a 20-year career in banking, lots of mergers and acquisitions at that time. Um, Left banking or bank left me, whichever way we might want to look at it. started my own consulting company. Tris was a client, that I gained through a networking opportunity, and that's how I arrived here.
So tell me a little bit about Tris and what it was like when you joined. So first a little bit about Tris and then, hey, when I joined, it looked like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just celebrated our 25th year. We are headquartered in central New Jersey, have about 600 employees. So the majority of them being right here in New Jersey, but we also have a team of a little over 100 throughout the country. And that team is dedicated to selling our ADHD product portfolio. As an organization, we are a pharma company. We really are focused on reshaping and shaping CNS health. So we have a leading ADHD portfolio. We really want to redefine pain management, and we do feel like we drive innovation through our portfolio. So a good blend of everything right here. And two other things I would say just about us, because I do think it will continue through as a thread. Um, we take our responsibility really seriously, meaning that it's not just about the products that we sell. So we recognize that medication may not be right for everyone. And we are committed to sharing resources and educating patients, caregivers, and the community just so folks can make the best decision for themselves, which is a really good thread into we also say that we're grounded in our culture of care, and that's care for, of course, patients, but also our employees and the communities in which we live and work.
Awesome, Cheryl. So from a hey, when I started Tris, you gave us kind of the 600 employees now.
Yeah.
I know you've been there for a while. What was it more like when you joined? What was the
Yes.
company like?
So, when I started, we were less than 50 employees. Thank you for asking that because I forgot to answer that part of your question. Um, we were less than 50 employees. I recall being interviewed by our CEO and his wife. They knew that they wanted to start and needed an HR department, but did not have one. So I recall competing against one of the largest international consulting and payrolling firms, and I got the job. And I do believe I got the job because I paid attention and I listened to what they were really looking for. Right? It wasn't a plug and play. It was here's where we are. We have a vision for growing, to get this department started because we realize it's important. But we don't necessarily know what it looks like. And so I had that opportunity.
So we'll dive into that growth scale change that you've witnessed. But if you had to just step back from it kind of holistically or big picture and go, hey, we've found the success because what's the because?
We found this success because we kept looking. So we may not have we may not have known where at all times where we were going, but we knew we were going to a different place. And so I think part of who Tris is as a company is we're going to ask for feedback. We are about continuous learning and continuous improvement, and we're going to get better when we are listening and hearing from everybody. And I kind of call it that black box of you don't know what you don't know. Like, let's make
Yeah.
that as small as possible.
Awesome. So before we dive into kind of some of that pain, challenge, struggle, success,
Yeah.
how are you spending most of your days these days as chief administrative officer?
Yeah. So I have functional responsibility. So, how I spend my time. I have functional responsibility for our human resources department as well as our environmental health and safety team. So, I think of that as anything that really works to keep our employees physically and emotionally safe. And then that kind of expands into corporate communications, community involvement, and culture. So a lot of sort of the people aspect of what we do, why we do it, and how it impacts others in the communities.
Awesome. From a clearly there had to be culture shift change as you scale, you move from, hey, we know everyone, to today that's harder. As you think about kind of that, I'll call it evolution, almost always leadership has an epiphany at some point like, hey, the way we're doing it's not going to work. We need to change something. Do you recall some of those moments in kind of the scale and growth of Tris?
Yeah, I think probably for us and even for me, I completely agree. As we expanded, we we realize, and I think it's that you can't continue to do the same thing over and over again, right? So, um, we added employees. We manufacture and package 24 hours a day. We added a sales force. So I think a lot of it was how do we keep team connected? How do we keep that sort of smaller feel, which then becomes as much as maybe you want personal interactions, you have to determine other ways to get that feedback. And I also think as we scaled and continued to grow, others outside of Tris became more interested in Tris from a talent standpoint and even an investor perspective. And so you have to think about yourself a little bit differently. We're not just here in central New Jersey, but we're making a difference and people are interested.
Yeah. So, I mean, I always look that, leadership, the essence of it is inspiring people to believe in something and then take action toward those beliefs, that we have to inspire both of those, the belief and then the action. And that,
Mhm.
the core of our culture comes from that somehow, that we envision a brighter, more successful future. We inspire that of everyone. And whatever you're doing around that for culture, I frame that it fuels the magnet that compels and repels, and that the better we get at it, the stronger the magnet becomes, and we just become better. And it's kind of this. I think Simon Sinek talks about culture is it's like going to the gym. When we start, it's really hard, and we look in the mirror and nothing's changed. Over time, it becomes easier to do. That's the fuel, the magnet, and a lot has changed. When you think about that evolution, fueling the magnet, what's behind it for Tris? What's the
Yeah.
power of the magnet?
Communication. When I was listening to you, that's exactly what I was thinking. And treating treating people like adults, right? So we all have a role, we all have a responsibility. We and I think you believe that everybody is here for the best of Tris, best for Tris, right? So when something so why do I say communication? When something goes right, let's talk about it and let's celebrate it. When something's not going right, let's not hide it. Like we're all part of this together. If we involve folks, then we can sort of channel the resources and the minds of what people's thinking. So I really do think it is that thread of communication and which goes into what we share, involving people, letting them know this, yes, this is your role, but this is how it fits. And I think that that really helps to kind of, when you talk about the belief, or even when we talk about feeling part of something and owning something, I do think that that's really been it for us.
Awesome. And in that scale, did you use any system traction, scaling up, outside advisors to help guide? What kind of drove the scale? Was it just an internal, we want to improve, or some outside help?
You know, it was mostly internal, but then, yes, there was some external, not like huge companies to come in and take a look at us, because I think one of our values is keep things simple and practical. So, as much as we know we need systems, processes, and things to enhance, we don't want to just add for the sake of adding. So, yes, a lot of it, quite honestly, driven internally and just being open to what's working, how can we make it better, and then also reaching out to folks who have done it before and kind of that lessons learned of what worked for you and then tailoring it to Tris.
So from a, I'll call it the biggest challenge, hardest part about the going from 50 to 400, what's it been from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I know our CEO would often describe us as changing the tires on a moving car. Like that's, I think, right. We're a lean organization. So what's some of the biggest challenges, especially for me, if I think early on, so I've been here 16 years, right? Doing the work from an HR standpoint, doing the work, but also needing to but also needing to manage it and also needing to lead it. And so I think for Tris, that's been some of those challenges is how do you get them done, of course, compliantly and correctly, but also with an eye on should I be doing it this way and looking critically at what we do.
From a, I'll call it senior leadership team. I know you guys have, when I looked at your website, kind of a senior leadership team. If you think about that team for a minute and go, well, how do we gain alignment? How do we create clarity? Because that becomes part of the vision forward. How does that come about? What's the process or way in which you guys do that regularly?
Yeah. So we do have regular a couple things. We do have regular monthly meetings so that and those are focused on our role as leaders. What does the organization look like? Like how are we doing towards our goals? I'm sure that that's pretty consistent with a lot of companies. Um what I think maybe we do differently than some others is we also have a standing meeting that's focused on culture and leadership commitments. So we take we obviously know we have a business to run and that needs to be successful, but also the how we get it done is really important. So we have those meetings. And I would also say, and kind of how does that translate? Like we went through most recently, even in December, a team exercise with some outside facilitation support that really said if we are one team. We are we are yes, functionally leaders at Tris, but just as important, if not more important, we are leaders at Tris, and we need to define what those behaviors are. And quite honestly, how we are going to work together and how we're going to hold ourselves accountable. Because kind of back to being lean, there's a lot to do. And we just want to make sure we are, yes, going in the right direction, but also doing it at the speed that it needs to be done.
So on your website, you have your core values and culture. I think you just have a page called Our Culture, and then it shows your five core values. And love them in many ways. It starts with believe we can. And what I love about your core values, it describes what it means. So it says, we don't give up easily and we don't take no for an answer. You have lead by example, listen to understand, keep things simple and practical, and then do the right thing. Those become the essence of, I hope, who you hire, how you coach, how you let people go. Is that true? Is it alive and well? Is that the I'll call it key pin of fueling the magnet, or is there something else?
No, it is the key pin. Like when I was just describing the offsite meeting that our senior leadership had, that we took each of those values and we defined behaviors and actions that if someone on my team is going to know that we're living it, what does that look like? So we took it to not just words, but this is what it looks like. So we took those value statements that you said, and then we actually defined, like, behaviors around it.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys do a really good job of what I call defining what it is. So you have, I'll use believe we can because I love. I have another organization that has it starts with we can, um, and they define what it means and what it doesn't mean, and so that's worth thinking about for you guys. And you may already have, but you have believing is half the battle. We set our minds to believe that we can, which serves as our motivational foundation. We don't give up easy, and we don't take no for an answer. So
Yeah.
I love that, and then I spend time with organizations occasionally going, "Well, what doesn't it mean?" Well, it doesn't mean that we do fruitless, silly things,
Yeah.
that we don't take on challenge that makes no sense to serve our clients, our company, drive profits. I mean, whatever it is, it's like we're not foolish.
Yeah.
It's not that
Yeah.
we believe we should be a paper company. Um, there's a counter to the what it means, what it doesn't mean, so that the way I call it is that we're clear that we've created again we're fueling the magnet in this way that when you show up living our core values, This is what it means. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean this. Because often people will like, well, I am going the extra mile. And you're like, yeah, but you're doing work that shouldn't be done. You're doing
Mhm.
silly, and so whatever it is, we can point to the other side. Have
I
you guys
totally
done that?
see
Have
it.
you kind of talked about what it doesn't mean here?
Yeah, you know what? We have, but I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that because we do say, like, even in the believe we can, like, yes, as you said it, right? It's there, but what is it not? It's not being a pessimist, right? Like we're not victims where when something happens, we're not going to ignore it. So we definitely talk about what it is not. And I hear where you're coming from in that too.
It just makes it stronger, clearer again. If we're after this magnet that fuels and
Yeah.
compels, it will also, that's the beautiful thing. The reason I use this magnet metaphor is because it will repel. People will show up over time and go, man, everyone here is optimistic, positive, driving forward versus you use the victim word. You have people that come aboard like, well, no, the world's happening to me. You're like, yeah, that's not the people we want here. And, I used to joke and I go, yeah, there's jobs up the street. Um, you know,
Yeah.
it's not here. We're looking for people that look and act and behave. And I would often talk about core values, Cheryl, is like, we're all like Sesame Street. And if you're the one that's not like the others, you're going to stand out. And that these core values are alive and well. Do you guys routinely measure people against them? Do you have some system evaluation in HR where you're looking at, well, how well do people live our core values? Are we giving them feedback?
Yeah, we do. We do. And we build it into our interview practices too. So we do talk about, like, for instance, if you're an individual who's used to flying under the radar, right? Like doing X amount of work and just enjoys coming in every day, this is what I'm going to do. We may not be right for you because it's not a lane you're going to swim in, it's a pool. And sometimes we're going to want you to get outside of that pool. So we do talk somewhat in that interview, we pull those threads in. And yes, specific to your question, in our performance reviews and even our coaching documents, we we're about 65% on performance to goal from a rating standpoint, and then the other 35 is living the culture and
Awesome.
how you adhere to the values.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I always use a baseball metaphor. Like you have to be able to play the position. And you need to be good in the clubhouse. So, that both of those matter and that, we get extremes of both of those. Like, well, culturally, I go, you're kind of like our mascot, but you can't play a position on the field. Others are, well, you are a superstar on the field, but you are a complete jerk in the clubhouse. And I need you to, I used to call it get to average or better in how you get along. Because if you don't, I don't need brilliant jerks. And, the way I used to frame it is like, you can keep being brilliant. You just can't keep being a jerk if you want to work here. And, we've seen both of those extremes in what I call performance and clubhouse. And that's clearly needed.
Yeah. I
If you
think that
could
that's often one of the hardest ones too. It's when you have the performance and not the clubhouse. Like those are the conversations you have to have. But that's also where there's that little bit of a struggle because you've got the performance. At the long run, though, it just like one person, the damage one person can do is
Well, and Cheryl, you've talked about it. I'm curious if you have real world lessons there because the way I always frame this is, if we believe in the collective power of team, and you pointed to it earlier, like it's more about all of us. It's more about the we're going to win. That's well described in a book called Tribal Leadership, where stage three companies are I'm great, you're not, which is 50% of the organizations on the planet. To go to the next stage, which is stage four, they talk about leadership has an epiphany. We need to be better than the collection of individuals, that we need to be great. And there's a language shift. There's a noble cause and core values, all of which you have. And it
Mhm.
moves, no, collectively we're great. And if collectively we're great, we can't have the jerks anymore. I mean, it's what you said. It starts to wreck the environment and it becomes cancerous, even if they're top performers. And so I'm sure you guys have encountered that. Kind of, we'll just label it as the brilliant jerk. How have you guys solved that?
Yeah. I think even in earlier on in my career, one of the leadership roles I received or one of the advancements that I was able to make was because the person ahead of me was that brilliant jerk. And so I felt it. And I knew what I saw it, the impact on others, but I also felt it. So I live some of that and know it. And then, yes, we have had to deal with that here at Tris. And quite frankly, I think one of the other things about us from a cultural perspective is that, yes, we're going to be respectful, but we're going to be direct in providing right examples and providing feedback. So we've had individuals and most, if not all of them, I could tell you are not here anymore. And there were words that to this day, even if it was 10 years ago or that person's been gone for 10 years, others who are here still, as they talk about that time, use words like toxic and cancer, like you've talked about. And that's just the impact that you can't afford to drag your feet.
Yeah. No, I mean, to me, it is that. And you know, I have a bull analogy because a lot of stuff for me is bulls, and I call it bulls that are in the ring. You know, they're powerful, passionate, but they're destructive. And that, you know, we need to get them and coach them and go, hey, we want this passion redirected in a positive direction instead of hurting other people. And if you can't, then, you know, much like the bull in the ring, you end up being slaughtered. You're moved out of here. You're sent off. And um, you know, I also use that analogy like, well, the bull in the ring is angry for a reason. You know, he's
Yeah.
being tormented and tortured. And if we have some role in that as leaders, it's worth understanding. And can we be more effective? So I get that. If you look and say, hey, our senior leadership team, if you could change one thing, wave your magic wand, make the team more dynamic, what would be behind it?
Um, I If we could make it more dynamic, what I would say is I'll go back to being lean, which I mentioned before, and succession planning. Like, we don't ha because of right now, the way that we're structured, our bench isn't as strong as there's a lot of really good people here doing great work, but from a succession planning standpoint, if we were more focused on that, then I think that would enable and I hope this is gonna answer your question, then that enables the senior leadership team to be more dynamic. So sometimes when you're leading, right, we're leading the company, we're leading the team, but we also have our hand in getting a lot of things done. I
Yes.
think sometimes pulling yourself out of that and really spending more time at the I'm a leader at Tris um, would would be better for us. I do think we've done a good job, and part of our strength is recognizing when we don't have the talent on board because we're venturing into a new area. So it's not a development opportunity. We just need to go and acquire it.
Well, and it's funny because, you know, whether this is A player development, right people in the right seat, I mean, whatever the philosophy is, or just leadership development, what you find, and, you know, I deal with a couple hundred business owners, CEOs a year, is that I go, you'll know when this happens because you'll feel lazy. You will wake up and go, what happened all of a sudden? And you'll go, I got this great team. I don't have to do their work anymore. It will hit you like a ton of bricks initially. You're like, "Well, what am I doing anymore?" And, you know, that moves to then what you said, which is, "Well, then I gotta focus on vision forward. I gotta engage. I gotta maintain expectation." And I go, it changes from doing the work to leading and inspiring. And when you do that, the first few moments of that, and, you know, it's not just moments, it's months, but you're like, "What happened?" And that's the you know, when you arrive there, you're like, "Well, I have a high performing team," which is, you know, what this podcast is about. And so, you know, as you guys think about that, and what I found in my own experience running companies is that's really, um, easier when we're smaller. That
Yeah.
we go, "Yeah, we're going from 50 to 75 people. We know everyone we hire. We're close to it all, and as you scale, it gets harder and harder, and, you know, we point almost always in these cases to, well, our mid-management needs to be better, and I'll frame this in terms of A players because I've looked at this in the last 5 years a bunch, which is, yeah, true A players are 2 to 4 times better than the average. If we have those people on our team, we can afford to pay. Why? Because they're 2 to 4 times better than the average, and
Mhm.
you know we then have this high performance. And as you think about that challenge, Cheryl, it sounds like you guys are at least starting to talk about it. What's in the future plan to improve that?
Yeah. And one of the things we do when you talk about A players is that we also have, so we have our performance appraisals I was talking about, but we also have an additional ranking that kind of puts individuals at tiers, whether it be A, B, C, or D. And we talk about that throughout the country or company. So it's not like a hidden thing, but we do we do focus on that because, like you said, it is really important to we need to know who our A players are, and we need to know that we're developing and retaining them. Um, sorry,
And
yeah.
Cheryl, it sounds like you're similar. This is not, I mean, many people hear this and they go, "Oh, this is Jack Welch of old. Like, we got to get rid of C players." I'm like, no, it's not what it's about. It's about we want to understand who future leaders are. We want to be developing them. We want to make sure that we don't lose these superstars and that they're the top performers, top culture fit. And what we know is they outperform. And what we want is, I always tell organizations, you want your unfair share. How do we do a better job of creating the magnet that brings people here? And the first is, well, then we need to have leaders that are A players. If we don't, A players don't want to work for B and C players. They want to be inspired. They want to understand their role. And the other side of this is they're willing to pitch in and do more work because that's the reward they usually get if you're committed to more like them. And in the absence of that, they're like, "Well, I'm killing myself here, and Bill over there is getting rewarded for doing half of what I do." And so, there's a component inside our culture which you guys have outlined, and it sounds like you're driving toward.
Yeah,
Any
and
last
I
little bit of advice or how you guys have handled that? Sorry.
yeah, no, no, no. Yeah, I think from a couple of things you made me think of in that we do have and I just had a conversation probably a couple weeks ago. It when you have someone on the team who's not pulling their weight, right? It's all of the things that you just said and these it's all the things you just said, and ultimately it becomes a reflection on me as a leader. If I'm allowing this to happen, then why am I going to bust my you know what when player B is still here and I'm not seeing anything. Those are those are conversations and then decisions that we definitely have. So that it's still certainly no place perfect, right? So I'm not going to say that that doesn't exist, but at the end of the day, from a leader standpoint, we'll take that high performing individual, we will have the coaching conversation when it gets to the point where either I'm working harder at my job, keeping than you are, or the other thing I say is like somebody, they just fire themselves, right? Like we've coached, we've counseled, we've set expectations. And if at the end of the day, I'm pulling harder than you are for you, then, then that's when we know there just needs to be a different decision made, and we've done what we need to do.
Well, and if we reinforce the expectation, which you guys have the culture expectation, you have those 5 core values, which are well laid out and explained. It just becomes this ongoing magnet that people that aren't that go, well, I'm not that. You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't start every day with I can. So they start to feel like I don't belong here. And it's what you said. They will eventually, if you reinforce it enough, set the expectation, and then your leadership team is engaging around the wrong people go, I'm not right for this. Like I'm not, it's the Sesame Street. They wake up every day and go, I'm not like everyone else there. And they will start to look because it feels uncomfortable. We as humans are tribes. And if we have a high performing tribe, high performers want to stay. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
there's something in it for all of us as leaders. If you think about Tris a couple years from now, 2 or 3 years from now, what does success look like?
A couple years from now, so we will be further along if you and I talk a couple years from now, we will be further along in that succession plan like I've been talking about. And I think one of the other things when I mentioned earlier on just sort of about who Tris is, like we are growing. So we sell our products not just within the US, but we sell our products internationally. So one of the things we look at when we look at growth and we look at business continuity is where else other than here could we have another location for operations? So I do think a couple years from now, success is going to be more of the same, more business in different countries throughout the world. Um, and also in a location that is not central New Jersey from an operation standpoint, even if it's backup, right? But I fully expect that there will be a level of we'll need it from a capacity standpoint. And then and then the third thing I would say in addition then to succession planning and the business operations is AI and artificial intelligence. So, um, again, I know we're not alone in companies figuring out how this will work best for us. Um, so we know that there's an innovation context and way that we can use AI. We know that there's an efficiency, right? It's blending those things from a business and a culture standpoint. What I will say kind of in my space is as much as we do from that AI perspective, I still really believe that's gonna make culture and communication that much more important. Like, we're still gonna have people. We're still gonna need what motivates them, what demotivates them. We're still gonna need our A players. They may look different, but we're still gonna need them. So I think even as you advance in one area, it just actually enhances the culture and the communication piece of what an organization should do.
Um, one other thing that you guys have clearly figured out on some level is how do we hire? Because you've gone from 50 to 400. Sounds like you have more coming. Do you guys use any sort of assessment at hire? Do you look at, so clearly I heard focus on core values, but what's kind of your overall hiring process to understand the candidate?
Yeah, we don't use an assessment. We get, although I don't have a percentage for you, we get a high amount of referrals. So when you talk about A players wanting to play with A players, a lot of our talent pool is from referrals. And no, we don't use an assessment off the top, but we do really focus like within my team of making sure that there are the right questions that really hone in on technical aspects as well as culture. And the other thing that we do is we involve a lot of employees in that interview process. So that and we do it for 2 reasons. One, we want the candidate really to get a good picture of who Tris is. Sometimes if I'm just talking to you, I'm going to get my assessment of your company really from whatever I can find online and from our conversation. So I think we become more real to the candidate when there's more that we can meet, when the more that there's a candidate, and the more that we have involved, the more we can kind of probe. Again, sort of that technical and the cultural aspects. How are they going to work within my team? How are they going to collaborate cross functionally? So we also hope to get a better picture of the candidate and hopefully how they will be successful when they join. So
Yeah, awesome. So, this is the podcast is designed for leaders who want this high performing team. What's the one thing you've learned about doing that? Like, if you had to share with the listener, hey, as I reflect on my career, if I think about my time at Tris, our ability to scale and drive a more high performing team, what's the one thing you would share? Like, here's what I've learned.
yeah, I would share that I had to learn and I have learned how to grow from being an effective manager to an effective leader. Meaning, right, like when you're a manager, you have your team or you have your function area and you know what it takes to get things done. And as a leader, so much more about not doing but enabling others to do, and being focused from a decision-making standpoint on decisions for Tris. So we have to get out of that comfort level of, "I know what I'm doing and I can manage," to, "I am now a leader of the company. That means my peers and my colleagues are my team, and for me, that means I need to be the best leader I can for my team to help them be successful, but not do things for them." That was a long-winded answer.
No,
Apologies.
awesome. Awesome, awesome. If people wanna follow, Tris or you, Cheryl, where should they go?
They should go to we have our LinkedIn account, so they can find Tris Pharma, and myself on LinkedIn, to follow us even culturally in education, Facebook, Instagram, X. We're starting TikTok and YouTube, so it's our goal just to sort of spread where we are.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Anything else you'd wanna share with the listener today?
Um I think the one thing that I would like to share just sort of as parting advice is really work to be people do matter. And I think we all need to keep that in mind when we're and no matter what we do from a personal and professional standpoint. And I would also just say be your authentic you, right? Like we you need to show up as who you are. You need to be comfortable in sharing that. So just never try to lose that piece of who you are, and always remember that people matter.
Well, it's funny, the part you said, "Be who you are." I always talk about it with emerging leaders, and I help with some I have a leadership course. I always talk about this is, same way that the company magnet compels and repels, so do you. That you'll find your right place if you lean into that, and you'll compel the right people for you. And that may cause you to one day wake up and go, I'm not right for this company. That my authentic self doesn't fit here." And
Mhm.
that's okay, and that drives your highest level passion. And many people are. I also joke and I go, well, they call it work. So let's not get hung up in it. You're not off to utopia today. You're
Yeah,
still working.
yeah.
But we should enjoy it. We should, be comfortable being who we are and leaning into that. That's when the best things happen in organizations. So I appreciate that last comment. Well, Cheryl, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate your time today, your honesty, candor, and just sharing some of the success at Tris. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, David. I've very much enjoyed it. Appreciate you taking the time.